Hey RVers, tenters, and rugged explorers, I'm Amanda, and I'm joined by Laura and Nanook. Welcome back to History, Hounds, and Happy Campers. Our mission, we bring you in-depth campground reviews, strategic historical deep dives, and our latest trail chronicles from the road. We have traded the comfort of our camper for the raw, untamed beauty of the Sonoma Coast. We actually brought our tent for this trip and are squeezed into a primitive site at Wrights Beach Campground, right on the Pacific Ocean. This is a bucket list location, and thankfully, you no longer have to wake up at 4 a.m. to get a spot. Reservations are now available for these coveted sites. The big question here is the primitive strategy. We'll show you exactly how to snag one of these spots, what it's like to tent camp right next to the ocean, and how to prepare for the relentless coastal wind. Plus, we'll dive deep into the fascinating history of the coast. Quick question for the comments. Are you willing to trade your comfy RV bed for a tent right next to the Pacific Ocean? Yes or no? Let us know. Access and location. Wrights Beach is located directly off Highway 1, just north of Bodega Bay, California. The drive is spectacular, curvy coastal drive. The challenge? Sites are small, paved, and tucked in a small strip between the highway and the ocean. The crucial reservation strategy. Here's the game changer. These sites are now reservable through ReserveCalifornia. Booking tip. You still need strategy. These sites are incredibly popular, so you must book well in advance, often 6 months to the day of your planned arrival, to secure your weekend spot. The process? Use the online system to view photos and dimensions. Since the sites are small, confirming the size of your vehicle or tent space is critical before you book. This is a primitive site. For this trip, we decided to get back to the basics and use our tent. Site configuration, sites are paved pads. We found that the pavement makes staking difficult, which brings us to the biggest challenge, the wind. The wind challenge. The coastal winds here are relentless. You need heavy-duty stakes and low-profile tent. Utilities. There are no hookups. There are nearby water spigots and dumpsters for your trash. Ocean element. Be prepared for sand, wind, and salt spray. It will cover your tent, gear, and everything else. The ocean on this stretch is not advisable for swimming. They have very dangerous currents here, so just watch the ocean from afar. Facilities, the park provides restrooms, flush toilets, and trash service, which are clean, but no showers. Nanook, our Tibetan Mastiff, love the tent life and the proximity to the beach, but dogs must be kept strictly on a leash. The constant mesmerizing sound of the Pacific Ocean is your noise pollution here. It can be loud, but will put you to sleep. Connectivity check. You are here to disconnect. Cell service, patchy at best. Streaming is nearly impossible. This tent camping trip truly is a forced digital detox. The Chronicle, California's rugged Russian coast. This stretch of coast is stunning, but it's also saturated with incredible layered history. Our first essential day trip from Wrights Beach takes us just 45 minutes north along Highway 1 to one of the most unique historical sites in all of California, Fort Ross State Historic Park. This wasn't built by the Spanish or the Americans. This was the headquarters of the Russian-American Company, established here in 1812. The Russians named this settlement Fort Ross, and it was the primary base for trade and expansion during the North American coast. The sea otter trade, a catalyst for settlement. The Russians were here for two primary reasons. The first was their highly lucrative sea otter trade. The pellets of the sea otter were incredibly valuable, prized in China and Europe for their dense, beautiful fur. Russian hunters had nearly decimated the otter population in Alaska, so they moved south. They relied heavily on the expertise of the native Alaskan hunters, primarily the Aleut people, whom they brought down in their baraskas, skin kayaks, to hunt the otter right off the coast. This relentless hunting put incredible pressure on the marine ecosystem and was a major economic engine that sustained the fort for decades. The cultural crossroads. The Kayasha, Pomo, and Russians. Life here wasn't just about furs. It was fascinating and often complex cultural crossroads. The Russians settled in the ancestral land of the Kayasha Pomo people. The relationship was not always equal, but it was essential for both sides. The Kayasha Pomo provided vital local knowledge and labor, assisting with food gathering and construction. Unlike the often violent Spanish missions to the south, the Russians generally maintained a trading relationship. However, the introduction of diseases and the disruption of traditional hunting grounds had a huge impact on the native population. Today, the Pomo community is still very much alive, and their history is integral to understanding Fort Ross. Agricultural ambitions. The second reason for the fort was agriculture. Since their Alaskan posts were difficult to supply, the Russians attempted to turn Fort Ross into a giant farm, supplying wheat, vegetables, and livestock to their northern colonies. They built impressive mills, barns, and established small orchards and vineyards. Unfortunately, the foggy, cool coastal climate wasn't ideal for large-scale farming, and the agricultural efforts largely failed. This, combined with the collapse of the sea otter population, is ultimately why the Russians chose to sell the fort in 1841 to John Sutter right before the California Gold Rush began. Walking the reconstructed grounds today, seeing the chapel, the barracks, and the stockade, you are stepping back into history, far more global than most people realize. It's a must-see. Day trip number 2, Bodega Bay and the Fishing Legacy. Just 15 minutes south of Wrights Beach lies Bodega Bay, a picturesque harbor that tells a much different story than the imperial history of Fort Ross. The town is the beating heart of the Sonoma Coast maritime history, but entirely on the bounty and danger of the Pacific. The unforgiving trade. For generations, Bodega Bay has thrived on fishing. The harbor is famous for its catches, primarily salmon, crab, especially Dungeness crab, and Pacific oysters. But make no mistake, working this coast is one of the most difficult and dangerous professions in the world. The element of danger. The California coastline here is notoriously unforgiving. The seas are often rough, unpredictable fog banks roll in fast, and the currents are strong. Every day these fishermen and women head out. They are wrestling with the Pacific. The difficult life. Their lives are marked by long, grueling hours, often leaving before dawn and returning late, dictated entirely by the tides, the weather, and the seasonal quotas. You see the deep connection to the water in the way they work their nets and maintain their boats. It's a tough, physically demanding, and deeply personal way of life that has sustained this community for over a century. Harbor of history. The bay itself has been crucial for California trade since the 1840s, serving as port for both fishing and lumber shipments from the interior redwood forest. Today, the docks are still active. You can truly feel that working heritage. Watching the crab boats unload or the salmon fleets preparing is like watching living history. Film history bonus. Of course, we can't forget the fun piece of history. Bodega Bay was the main location for Alfred Hitchcock's terrifying 1963 film, The Birds. The famous white schoolhouse and the misty harbor are instantly recognizable to movie fans. If you want a real connection to the history of the local economy and the rugged people who make a living here, spend some time walking the docks, watching the work, and enjoying a meal of the freshest catch possible. Covered the Russian traders and the fishermen, but look up at the expansive rolling hills that define the Sonoma Coast. This land tells the story of the California ranching era, which shaped the landscape you see today. From fur trade to cattle ranches. After the Russians sold Fort Ross in 1841, American and European settlers quickly moved in. The economic focus shifted dramatically from the dangerous fur trade to raising cattle and dairy farming. The land use. For decades, this entire coastline, including the bluffs right where we set up our tent, was divided into vast ranches. Cattle grazed down to the ocean's edge, using the mild climate and open space for pasture. The legacy. When you hike the trails here, you are often walking along old wagon roads or fence lines established by these ranching families. The history is why, even today, you will still see cattle and sheep grazing on the leased state park lands. It's a nod to the long agricultural heritage of the coast. The fight for preservation. However, by the mid-20th century, pressure from developers and the need for coastal highways threatened to close off this spectacular coastline forever. This is where the story of preservation begins. Protecting the bluffs. Local activists, conservationists, and eventually the state of California recognized that this unique combination of rugged cliffs, tide pools, and undeveloped beaches was too valuable to lose. The birth of a state park. Through a series of land acquisitions and dedicated efforts, the state established the Sonoma Coast State Beach and Park system. This effort spanned decades and ultimately saved mile after mile of coastline, ensuring that these dramatic bluffs, scenic overlooks, and access points like Wrights Beach are permanently available to the public. So when you look out at the view, remember you're not just seeing nature, you're seeing the successful outcome of a determined fight to keep the coast public. It's a huge win for the happy campers of the future, preserving land shaped first by the Pomo, then by the Russian fur trade, and finally by the American rancher. Now it belongs to all of us. So, is Wrights Beach worth the primitive tent camping effort? Absolutely, if you snag a reservation. Location and view, we give it 5 out of 5 stars, unbeatable front row view of the Pacific Ocean. Access and strategy, we give it 4 out of 5 stars. Reservations are available, but require diligent advanced booking 6 months out. Amenities are primitive, we give it a 3 out of 5 stars. Basic restrooms and trash only, you must be fully self-contained. Tent camping experience, we give it 4 out of 5 stars. High reward for the challenge, incredible exposure to the elements. Overall value, we give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. High value for the location, history, and convenience of reserving ahead. Wrights Beach is a pristine, rugged, unforgettable piece of California. A must for any history hound ready to embrace tent life on the Pacific. That's our full chronicle of Wrights Beach Campground and our tent camping adventure. If you love raw coastal camping, please hit the like button and click subscribe. Do you prefer the reservation system or the adrenaline of first come, first serve camping? Let me know in the comments. Happy trails, and we'll see you on the next one.